Zangbo. Welcome to Dawai Kudroen. My guest tonight, as you must have already watched the Causation, my guest tonight is Dr. Pema Wangmo, the first Bhutanese to receive a doctoral degree in special education from the University of Newcastle in Australia. Doctor, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. I think this is one subject, or this is one area that needs some attention. Must have received some attention by now, but not as much as it used to be desired. So, on a personal note, you have already mentioned about your interest to go for this particular subject. But on the other hand, you definitely must have thought about your roadmap for the future. So what kind of future do you think you would have by taking up this doctoral degree in special education? Do you see future in Bhutan for you personally?
Before coming to answering your question, I would like to thank BBS and your show for inviting me to this prestigious show. And now coming back to your question, I definitely would like to make some changes in this area in our country. Not only for being the first person to get a degree in that, but also for doing that, I drew the inspiration from the children in Bhutan. So I think since I drew the inspiration of doing this from the children of Bhutan, I definitely would like to do something for the children in Bhutan.
Okay.
And I think it cannot happen overnight, but with determination and with precision, and then with time, I will be able to do something in this area.
Do you think this would be challenging? Just one person?
I'm somebody who likes challenges. And that's why I chose this. And I think life is full of challenges, and everything or anything in life, this is also another challenge, and I got to face it.
Yes, optimistic about support and assistance that you would receive from different stakeholders who are supposed to.
I think we definitely need to push things ourselves first.
Yes.
And I feel that if you can do something different for the good of the people around you, I think definitely with this good intention, the stakeholders would be quite supportive in this.
Yes. Now, you mentioned about learning this difficulty, reading difficulty, and there are many areas that you have actually studied and researched upon. Now, considering all this, how serious is the problem in Bhutan? Because now through this show, first thing that our people would want to know is this problem must be serious. That's why we have somebody studying on this particular subject. Mm-hmm. Or is it because you have a particular interest in this particular area, that's why you chose to do it, though the problem is not that serious? How would you look at it?
I would definitely like to say that it's a serious problem. This can be I can support this with very strong evidence from the annual education reports.
Yes.
For example, from the educational reports and the data from UNESCO, yes. Which are related to children repeating grades.
Yes.
And there it shows that among the countries in Southeast Asia, Bhutan has the highest repetition rate with 11%, followed by Nepal with 9%, and then some countries like in Republic of Iran. So I definitely feel that it's a serious problem.
Yes. Repeating grades, to some extent, those good old days, even teachers used to mock at those students, not with any bad intent, but mainly to embarrass them and do better next time. Mm-hmm. That would be one of the main reasons why teachers would mock at those students repeating grades. Mm-hmm. But we have also personally witnessed some students repeating grade not just once, but even twice, thrice. Mm-hmm. So this kind of instances could be now attributed to the difficulties that you have mentioned in Causation. Yes. Can we associate this with? Because I think for now, these issues, if teachers cannot understand in a right spirit, through right perspective, then the fear is that again, if students are repeating grades, they would think that students are lazy, students are not studying, or there could be many other problems, but not the problems that you just mentioned or you studied.
A few of the teachers would be realizing that, I believe, that it could be due to learning difficulties, but it's something which is not widely known. It's a concept which is not widely known.
Yes.
So maybe it's because it's perhaps to do with the thing that is not physically noticeable. So they may not be understanding the problem because it's not like sensory impairments or intellectual development problems or anything like that. Children with learning difficulties are children with average and above average intelligence, and but they have some problems in acquiring the skills which impact their lives in the school, in the community, and also at the workplace. So that's why it's quite difficult to understand whether a child has a learning disability or a difficulty.
Are these problems, for instance, dyslexia? Now, is it inborn or students develop this habitually?
According to the experts, they believe that, and when they show the images of the brain, the images they have taken, they show that the structure of the brain itself is the development and functioning and the structure of the brain itself is quite different from a typical brain. Yes. So it's inborn. And also, there is no, they don't have, the experts they don't exactly know the exact cause of that, but it may be due to before birth, during birth, or if it may be due to alcohol and drug-related things when the child is still in the womb, the fetus development, and then also injuries during or after birth, and also when a child is born with very low birth weight, lack of oxygen. If a child is born blue, that means your brain is affected or something like that. So the scientists are quite serious that they have come to know that from the imaging of the brain that the structure of the brain itself of a dyslexic child is quite different from a typical brain. Yes. So that shows that, and it especially the structure, the part of the brain that deals with language.
Yes, sir. And there's no cure for it, but we need to accommodate their needs and support them.
It's persistent, it's lifelong, but with early intervention and accommodation, it's not necessarily that it should stop someone from achieving his goals in his life, his or her life.
Yes, sir. I'm sure this problem must be prevalent in our society. And if it is prevalent, then have you heard of any special accommodations or any preferential treatment that these children are receiving? Have you heard of any as of now?
Since this is not a disease, so we don't have a particular intervention or something like that for one particular learning disability. It will depend on what sort of difficulties or disabilities one is presenting. So the intervention or the identification, it should be tailor-made to that individual of what sort of difficulties, learning difficulties that person has. For instance, if you have a elementary school-age child, for example, he has reading problems, dyslexia. He's dyslexic, but he might excel very well in mathematics. So what kind of intervention do we need? We first have to look at the reading components and the skills of that child. So we evaluate the child using that tool and then make the necessary intervention in line with that difficulty.
Yes, sir. Now, will it be difficult for an ordinary teacher to recognize if a child or a student is suffering from this problem?
Generally, I don't know. But in a few cases, if a teacher is really keen in monitoring how a child is progressing, like how the child is socially participating and how a child is progressing in his or her learning, as well as how a child is, what kind of achievements, like educational achievements the child is having, then I think like in most cases, a teacher will be able to understand that this child has a problem.
Yes.
But most of us, like, we don't go into depth of, like, first of all, we don't have time, most of the teachers. Second of all, like, we don't go in detail to see how a child is progressing, because, like, we have to finish everything on time, and there are many children.
And too many students.
Yes.
With fair number of teachers. Yes. In cases like this, now, firstly, you need to identify the problem. And even after identifying the problem is not just to be dealt by the teachers alone, but even parents need to know that his or her child is suffering from this kind of problems.
Yes. You have rightly pointed out that it's not only the teachers who have to do that. First of all, a team of professionals have to come together, like to fully evaluate a child, to know that if to be able to evaluate and see whether a child really has a learning difficulty, because learning difficulty, like at some point of time in our life, it happens to everybody, but that's not learning difficulty. We have some problem with reading, writing, that's not learning difficulty. It's something which persists and like which doesn't go away, but you can always like circumvent and with proper interventions. And the good news is that virtually all children can increase like their literacy, they can have huge growth in their literacy skills. And like, but what we need to do is we have to really check our lessons in detail. We have to know the details of a lesson. We have to be precise and we have to be direct. Because if somebody can't understand the question properly, then we have to give direct feedback. Yes. And then, so if with time, it doesn't happen overnight, but with time, increase in practice and then teaching, and with a lot of support from the people we love, who love us, then I think like we can accelerate the literacy skills of these children, and then they can, when they become adults, they can start contributing to the nation or the country, and then they become independent, and they have a lot of, they have a lot of independence, choice, and agency in their lives.
Yes, sir. Now, dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyspraxia, these are the problems that you mentioned in Causation. Now, if a child is suffering from these problems, how will this atmosphere around impact on the child? If the atmosphere around is not conducive for easy learning or unfriendly to the child, will this worsen the situation?
Definitely. When I'm talking about accommodation here, we need to accommodate them, like I said in the beginning, like to children who have dyslexia, having problems with reading, like why don't you give them oral tests or provide them with lessons on tape or something like that. But at the same time, you got to balance it. Like at the same time, not only accommodations, like these are not either or options, but we have to provide them with skills, like and then intervention and programs to accelerate their reading skills or writing skills together with the accommodation.
Now, will this not make them vulnerable? For instance, if you are talking about somebody who is suffering from learning difficulty, then you come up with, for instance, they sit for exam, and because he or she cannot read out the question papers well, you assist them by reading out the questions to them. Now, he or she is receiving a preferential treatment or different treatment from the others. Now, will that not make the child think that, okay, I'm not as competent as others because I have been given a separate treatment from the rest?
This is what we think when we are not aware of it. But I think like once we are aware of it, it will be something like which we will take as something which we do every day. For example, like in the schools, they say like these are the question papers. You have to be able to read the questions, understand them, and answer it. But if we try to look at other alternatives without being like without not like here we don't alternate the content of the question paper. We don't alter it, and then we don't give. We are not giving them an unfair advantage. So slowly, when we like to start something like this first, like there will be controversies or things like that. But as we pick up and gradually try to follow this process, then I think people will come to understand it. And then, because here we are not giving them any advantage.
Yes. So you had your research presented back in a university. Now, why would Tibetanese children dread going to schools? And one area that you mentioned during Dzongkha session was children dread going to school because they fear their teachers.
Oh yes. And
are things improving now?
In the urban areas, maybe, I think. But the schools that I did my research was in the semi-rural and the rural areas. So it will be, so if I had done it in the urban schools, the findings might be quite different. But in the schools that I did my research, and what the children reported, which were like, of course they were like, I did research on 3 groups of children. The children who failed grade 4 and they were repeating, and children like who have been their peers but they have graduated and gone to grade 5, and then children who are in the present grade 4 who are their current peers.
Yes.
And then generally across all these 3 groups of children, they felt that not having friends at school, teachers being like not being fair, and then like many other reasons they mentioned about not liking school. But they also, across these 3 groups of children, they also mentioned why they liked going to school. And then most of the children who have graduated to grade 5 and who are in the present grade 4, the ones who have not been retained, they also reported that they liked going to school because the teachers were very good to them. The teachers appreciated their work, and they knew they could learn and like many new things at school. But the students who were repeating grades, they were the ones like mostly what they reported was like most of them reported that they didn't like going to school because they were like being scolded and beaten by teachers. And the reason for that was because they were not knowing the lessons well, not being able to answer questions. So that was quite different. And then I looked at the well-being of the children among these 3 groups of children. And then obviously like the general well-being of the children who were repeating grades were very low compared to the other 2 groups of children. So, and then I also looked at the profile of their reading at school, and they were generally reading much below the level of the other 2 groups. But across these 3 groups, all these children, they were not able to comprehend what they're reading well.
Is it because of the medium that we use? Maybe if we use our native language, we could have understood things better.
That's a good question. English, we are often referred to as English language learners because they have to read, write everything in English, and it has become a very dominant international language. Of course, there can be difficulties because in learning things in a different language, because but even children who speak English at home or are referred to as native English speakers, even they have problems with reading in English. And definitely for Bhutanese students, our difficulties will be even more than them.
You also made some reference to distance between school and their homes. If you could elaborate on this. Now, is this attributing to difficulty in learning?
Of course, that's why I'm saying the findings would have been, I feel that the findings would have been quite different if it was carried out in the urban schools, because in the urban areas, most of the parents speak in English at home, whereas the rural kids, they have not started speaking English till they attend PP at school. So then once they attend school in PP, then they start learning altogether a new language and start studying and doing everything in reading, writing, everything in a new language totally.
Okay. There are so many factors that we can talk about that can be attributed to learning difficulties in school or be in any atmosphere. And I think we talked enough about the problem itself. The issues that you have mentioned, the problems, dyslexia, dysgraphia, all these problems. Now, the larger issue in hand is, what are you going to do? Henceforth, what would be now your expectations from different stakeholders? For instance, talk about Ministry of Education. Have they done anything thus far? Or what needs to be done hereafter? Any policy guidelines or any changes that you would expect as an individual, and also somebody who has a degree in this particular field?
First of all, it's very important to create awareness and disseminate information. And then, like you said, review the policies, which are, and put in policies which are research-based. So we don't just take off something from the shelf and then put it there and say it's a policy. So, and then slowly and gradually, as the stakeholders or the educators, the parents come to know of it, like anything in life, it will start changing. And then I'm quite optimistic that soon we will be able to understand this concept, and it will be implemented and applied in the real classroom situations.
Yes, sir. Dr. Pema, thank you so much for your time, and I wish you all the luck in the world for whatever you would like to take it as an endeavor hereafter. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
With this, we come to the end of Dawai Kudroen for this week. And on Sunday, for People's Voice, we will be bringing you a discussion on annual Anti-Corruption Commission's report for 2012. So watch People's Voice on Sunday. And for next Dawai Kudroen, we have not yet identified any guests. But as and when we identify, we will try and let you know so that if you have any questions, you can get back to us. Post your questions, comments, and until next edition of Dawai Kudroen is aired, it's time to say good night, Tash Dile, and thank you so much for watching.